غرر بهم واستعمل قيادات متطرفة للمساس
ونرى اليوم
بأرواح
لا
الجزائريين.
يزال هذا النظام المخزن المغربي في ممارساته العدائية ضد الجزائر، سواء بالمخدرات أو اعتماده على نظام الكيان الصهيوني في تهديده للجزائر أو أنظمة أخرى معادية للجزائر.
معاشه الرئيس المرحوم اليمين زروال مع المغرب يعيشه الآن الرئيس عبد المجيد تبون مع دويلة الإمارات.
شكرا جزيلا لك أستاذ محمد شريف ضروي، أنت المحلل السياسي كنت معنا هذا الصباح. شكرا جزيلا لك. سمعنا الفاضل في كل مكان، تقبلوا تحياتي أنا بالقاسم جير، نلتقي غدا في أمان الله.
With Radio Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The President of the Republic, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces and Minister of National Defense, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has attended the funeral of former President and war veteran Yamin Zerouel held in Batna. Algeria has once again called on the belligerents in the Middle East and Gulf region to renounce to de-escalation policy and to recourse to force, advocating dialogue and diplomacy to settle all disputes. One Palestinian was today shot dead by the Israeli soldiers southwest of Hebron in the occupied West Bank. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. The funeral of former President Yamin Zerouel took place this afternoon at the Buruzan Cemetery in Batna with an official and solemn procession led by the President of the Republic, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces and Minister of National Defense Abdelmajid Tebboune. The ceremony was attended by high-ranking officers and state officials, national figures and government members, along with the late President's family, veterans and a large crowd of citizens. The funeral procession, accompanied by a massive participation of citizens who travelled from across the country, passed along the roads leading to the central cemetery in the late President's hometown, with people lining the streets to pay their respects. Earlier, citizens and veterans from various regions of the country paid their final respects to the deceased, who lay wrapped in the national flag at the Batna Governorate headquarters. In a solemn moment, the citizens reflected on the late Yamin Zerouel's long and dedicated struggle for the nation, followed by his leadership and protection of the country after independence. Following the passing of former President war veteran Yamin Zerouel, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has received several messages from various international leaders. These expressions of sympathy come from Arab and African heads of state, as well as leaders of countries with long-standing relations with Algeria, highlighting the profound impact of Zerouel's legacy both at home and abroad. The Secretary-General of the Arab League, Mr. Ahmed Abul Ghait, extended his condolences to the President of the Republic. He offered his deepest sympathy to the deceased family and the Algerian people during this difficult time. President Evariste Ndayishimiye of Burundi sent condolences, expressing his deep compassion for the Algerian people and the family of the late Yamin Zerouel. President Mahmoud Abbas of Palestine conveyed his sorrow, honoring Zerouel's support for the Palestinian cause. He assured the Algerian people of Zerouel's memory would be cherished by Palestinians and prayed for mercy and strength for the family. President Mohamed Ould-Sheikh Al-Ghazouani of Mauritania expressed sincere condolences to President Tebboune and the Algerian people, praying for divine mercy for the deceased and comfort for the family. Grand Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia sent heartfelt condolences to the family of the deceased and the Algerian people, offering prayers for mercy and patience during this time. King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud of Saudi Arabia also sent a message praying for mercy for Zerouel and for patience and comfort for the Algerian people. The chairperson of the African Union Commission, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, also extended his condolences. Numerous regional and international leaders expressed solidarity and condolences to Algeria following the death of former President Yamin Zerouel, recognizing his leadership and contributions. High-ranking officials, national personalities and war veterans have paid their final respects to the former President of the Republic, war veteran Yamin Zerouel, who passed away on Saturday after a long illness at the People's Palace here in Algiers. Among those who paid their respects were the Speaker of the Council of the Nation, Mr. Azouz Nasri, the Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Mr. Brahim Boughali, the Speaker of the Constitutional Court, Mrs. Leila Aslawi, the Prime Minister, Mr. Sifir Riyab, the Chief of Staff of the Presidency of the Republic, Mr. Boualam Bouhlen, and several government members who recited the Fatiha of the Holy Quran in memory of the deceased. General officers and high-ranking members of the National People's Army, national figures, political party leaders, war veterans and many citizens also visited the People's Palace to pay their respects to the former president. Members of the diplomatic corps accredited in Algeria also paid their last tribute. Instructed by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmejid Tebboune, the Minister of State in charge of Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, has arrived in Zagreb on an official visit to the Republic of Croatia. The visit is part of joint efforts aimed at strengthening political dialogue and consolidating economic cooperation between Algeria and Croatia, particularly in areas where both parties have complementary strength. During the visit, Mr. Attaf is scheduled to meet with his Croatian counterpart, Mr. Gordon Garlic Radman. He is also expected to be received by high-ranking officials. The Secretary-General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Lumines Magramen, has co-chaired the 7th session of the Algeria-India political consultation with the Secretary at the Ministry of External Affairs of India in charge of cooperation with southern countries, Mr. Nina Malhotra. On the occasion, both sides praised the historical ties and the friendship and cooperation between Algeria and India, as well as the positive momentum in bilateral relations, particularly following the state visit to Algeria in October 2024 by the President of the Republic of India, Mrs. Droupadi Murmu, and her significant exchanges with President Abdelmejid Tebboune. The discussions were an opportunity to explore ways and means to promote strategic partnership relations in line with the potential both countries have in various sectors, as well as to examine the schedule of upcoming bilateral events to serve the common interests of both nations. The two sides also exchanged views on several regional and international issues of common concern, particularly those related to the development of the situation in the regions that both countries belong to. Algeria has once again called on the belligerents in the Middle East and Gulf region to renounce the de-escalation policy and to the recourse to force, advocating dialogue and diplomacy to settle all disputes, whatever their nature, sensitivity and complexity. Mohamed Khatel has the details.
In a statement made to the 165th session of the Arab League meeting held via video conference, the State Minister for Foreign and African Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, expressed his solidarity with the Arab brotherly countries who have been targeted by unjustified and unacceptable Iranian military attacks perpetrated within a serious escalation in the Middle East. The diplomacy chief expressed his condolences and compassion to the families of the victims and recalled that the position relentlessly reiterated by the head of state Abdelmejid Tebboune translates his commitment to maintain a permanent contact with Arab counterparts during this critical period of the history of the Middle East region and the Arab world as a whole. He went on to say that while the military escalation in the Middle East entered its 5th month amid increasing threats of an extension, signs of appeasement, be they weak or insufficient, seem to be prevailing. The State Minister stressed the necessity to continue to pay attention to the sister country, Lebanon, who is targeted by a brutal Israeli aggression designed to perpetrate the same crimes perpetrated against the Palestinian people, notably in Gaza. He insisted that the Palestinian issue would always remain the core of the conflict in the Middle East, highlighting that it will always remain the main cause of the region's insecurity and instability as long as the rights of the Palestinians are denied.
The 8th edition of the Algeria Invest Expo has wound up at the Mohammed bin Ahmed Convention Center in Oran with over 80 preliminary partnership agreements signed in investment and export sectors. The agreements were made between national and foreign operators across various fields, including construction materials, electrical and household equipment and services, with a focus on exporting to African countries. 2 direct export deals were also signed for construction, materials and wood products to Tunisia and Mauritania. Additionally, investment agreements were made for establishing factories and production units in countries like Guinea, Zimbabwe and Namibia. The The 4-day event, organized by Sunflower Communication and under the Ministry of Industry's patronage, attracted over 15,000 professionals, including business people from Guinea, Senegal, Mauritania and Pakistan. The 8th conference of the Algerian Gas Industry Association held in Oran focused on natural gas and hydrogen innovation for sustainable industry. The Secretary General of APO, Farid Ghazali, highlighted Algeria's central role in the global gas industry, particularly its pioneering LNG production since 1964. He stressed the natural gas importance for Africa's industrialization, stability and regional integration, and called for a hydrogen ecosystem that supports local industrialization. The conference, with over 700 participants, also addressed energy security, decarbonization, and the role of AI and digitalization in the gas sector. The president of the Algerian Gas Industry Association, Nourdine Daoudi, stressed the importance of modern technologies in improving efficiency, reducing emissions, and advancing low-carbon hydrogen for a sustainable global energy system. Moving to the situation in the Middle East, one Palestinian was today shot dead by the Israeli soldiers southwest of Hebron in the occupied West Bank. The news agency Wafa affirmed that the Israeli occupying forces had prevented ambulances from reaching the Palestinian youngster. Meanwhile, at least 3 Palestinians were killed and several others wounded in airstrike carried out today by the Israeli army against the southwest eastern part of Gaza. This came as UN experts urged the Israeli occupying authorities to immediately release physician Hussam Abu Safia, stressing that the Palestinian originated from Gaza was subjected to acts of torture and other exactions carried out during his detention. Two UN special rapporteurs, Tlaneng Mofanking and Ben Saud, quoted reports as saying that the physician's health was critical. And as we come to the end of our news bulletin, I invite you to listen to this special page on the life of former President and war veteran Yamin Zarwel.
Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. As Algeria goes through a period of national mourning following the passing of former President and war veteran Yamin Zarwel, the country remembers him as a leader whose life was closely tied to its modern history. From his early involvement in the struggle for independence to his leadership during times of national challenge, Zarwel embodies dedication, resilience, and service to the country. With flags lowered to half-mast and citizens paying tribute, official statements highlighted his contributions to safeguarding the republic and preserving national unity. His decisions, values, and enduring legacy continue to shape reflections on Algeria's stability and institutional continuity. Born in 1941 in Batna, Yamin Zarwel joined the ranks of the National Liberation Army during the War of Independence, participating in the struggle that led to Algeria's recovery of its sovereignty. After independence, he pursued a professional military career, receiving training and assuming responsibilities within the National Armed Forces. He gradually rose through the ranks, serving in various command positions and contributing to the organization and development of military institutions. Over the years, he became known for his discipline, professionalism, and strong attachment to state principles, qualities frequently highlighted in official tributes. In 1994, during a period marked by significant political and security challenges, Zarwel was entrusted with leading the country as head of state. In 1995, he was elected President of the Republic in a context that requires efforts to restore stability and reinforce public institutions. His presidency, which lasted until 1999, focused on strengthening the authority of the state, supporting institutional functioning, and encouraging dialogue among national actors. Official accounts emphasize his role in leading the country through a sensitive transition and working toward a gradual return to constitutional rule. Throughout his time as president, Zarwel supported initiatives aimed at reaching national consensus and promoting political pluralism, while stressing the importance of securing unity and ensuring the state perennity. His decision to organize early presidential elections in 1999 was widely viewed as an effort to ensure a peaceful and orderly political transition. After leaving office, he withdrew from public life, maintaining discretion, a stance that reinforced his image as a leader committed to institutional respect. Despite his distance from public affairs, he continued to command respect across Algeria's political and institutional landscape. Tributes were paid by officials and citizens to express their respects and honor the late president. His remains were presented for a final tribute, and messages of condolence were sent by heads of states and government recalling his services as a mujahid or war veteran, a senior army official, and a head of state. The tribute emphasized his modesty, his sense of responsibility, and his dedication to preserving national cohesion during a pivotal period in Algeria's history. Yamin Zarwel's legacy is closely associated with the difficult decade Algeria has went through. His leadership is remembered for the efforts he made to preserve the state institutions, encourage dialogue, and pave the way for a restoration of stability. His decision to step aside remains a defining element of his political career. Even after leaving the presidency, he remained a respected national figure, symbolizing restraint, responsibility, and devotion to the country. The passing of Yamin Zarwel invites reflection on a generation shaped by the struggle for independence and the challenges of state building. His journey from a freedom fighter to a president depicts a life devoted to the nation, its unity, and the perennity of its institutions. You have been listening to Radio Algeria International. Stay tuned.
Back to the situation in the Middle East, the situation remains volatile in the Gulf region and the Middle East for the fourth week running, at a time when international efforts have continued to try and reach a peaceful settlement of the conflict. The missile and drone attacks have caused several countries of the region to close their airspace, resulting in the cancellation of thousands of flights. The escalation in the region has been at the center of the Arab League's Ministerial Council, which devoted its 165th session to the examining of the developments in the region and their repercussions on the security and sovereignty of several Arab states, while taking into account the risk and threats posed at the regional and international plans. In this respect, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that the fighting taking place in the Middle East might culminate into a spate of events that no one could control in the world's most unstable region. And every year on March 30th, Palestinians mark Land Day, or Yom al-Ard, to honor the memory of 6 Palestinians killed in 1976 by Israeli occupying forces during protest against the Israeli government's land confiscations in the Galilee. The event has become a symbol of Palestinian resilience and a reminder of the ongoing struggle for land rights and self-determination. Masoud Sharfi.
Each year on March 30th, Palestinians commemorate Land Day, or Yom al-Ard, to remember the tragic events of March 30th, 1976, when Israeli occupying forces killed 6 unarmed Palestinians and wounded more than 100 others during protests held against the confiscation of Palestinian land. This day marks the resistance to Israel's order to seize 2,000 hectares of land in the Galilee, part of a broader effort by the Israeli settlers to Judaize the region following the creation of Israel. The protests were particularly centered in the Palestinian towns of Sakhnin, Arabih, and Deir Hana, which were directly affected by the land seizures. The confiscated land was roughly equivalent to 3,000 football fields, or the distance from the southern tip of Manhattan to the start of Central Park in New York. Since then, Israeli occupation has continued to expropriate significant amounts of Palestinian land, designating it as military zones, state land, or under other labels. Most recently, on February 8, 2026, the Israeli occupying authorities approved sweeping measures to extend its control over the occupied West Bank, including making it easier for Israeli settlers to purchase Palestinian land and expanding Israeli occupying authorities' powers in areas under Palestinian control. This move has been condemned by the UN, human rights organizations, and several countries as a de facto annexation and as a direct threat to the possibility of a viable Palestinian state. Since October 7, 2023, Israel has significantly increased both the formal approval of settlements and the establishment of informal outposts in the West Bank. Peace Now, an anti-settlement organization, reported that in 2023, Israel approved 12,349 housing units, followed by 9,884 in 2024 and a record 27,941 in 2025. In December, the occupying authorities approved the setting up of 19 illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank, with many planned for densely populated Palestinian areas. This move will further limit Palestinian movement and jeopardize the potential for a future Palestinian state. At the same time, Israeli military raids, house demolitions, and arrests in the occupied territory have reached unprecedented levels. Settler violence has escalated, with attacks against Palestinians and their property becoming more frequent, often occurring with the support or indifference of the Israeli military and state. In 2022, 852 settler attacks were recorded. In 2023, 1,291. In 2024 and 1,449 in 2025, 1,828, an average of 5 attacks per day. Since October 2023, Israeli troops and settlers have killed at least 1,094 Palestinians in the West Bank, according to the latest United Nations figures. On March 23rd, the Israeli far-right Minister of Finance and head of the Settlement Administration called for the annexation of southern Lebanon, suggesting that Israel's borders should extend to the Litani River, roughly 30 kilometers from the Israeli border. His comments are seen as part of a broader push to change the territorial realities in the region. Meanwhile, more than 1 million Lebanese have been displaced from their homes due to Israeli military actions, with the Israeli Defense Minister declaring that the return of people to southern Lebanon would not be allowed until the security is restored.
Hello and welcome to this new edition of your weekly program, The Health Magazine. Every year, families face their share of colds, sore throats, and viruses. When you bring your child to the doctor for these illnesses or others, do you automatically expect a prescription for antibiotics? Many parents do, and they're surprised, maybe even angry, if they leave the doctor's office empty-handed. After all, what parent does not want their kid to get well as quickly as possible? But your doctor could be doing you and your child a favor by not reaching for the prescription pad. Antibiotics, also known as antibacterial, are medications that destroy or slow down the growth of bacteria. They include a range of powerful drugs and are used to treat diseases caused by bacteria. Antibiotics cannot treat viral infections, though, such as cold, flu, and most coughs. How antibiotics work. Antibiotics, first used in the 1940s, are certainly one of the great advances in medicine, but overprescribing them has resulted in the development of resistant bacteria that don't respond to antibiotics that may have worked in the past. Plus, whenever kids take antibiotics, they run the risk of side effects, such as stomach upset and diarrhea, or even an allergic reaction. To understand how antibiotics work, it helps to know about the two major types of germs that can make people sick, namely bacteria and viruses. Although certain bacteria and viruses cause diseases with similar symptoms, the ways these two organisms multiply and spread illness are different. Bacteria are living organisms existing as single cells. Bacteria are everywhere and most don't cause any harm, and in some cases may be beneficial. Lactobacillus, for example, lives in the intestine and helps digest food. But some bacteria are harmful and can cause illness by invading the human body, multiplying, and interfering with normal bodily processes. Antibiotics are effective against bacteria because they work to kill these living organisms by stopping their growth and reproduction. Viruses, on the other hand, are not alive and cannot exist on their own. They are particles containing genetic material wrapped in a protein coat. Viruses grow and reproduce only after they've invaded other living cells. The body's immune system can fight off some viruses before they cause illness, but others, colds, for example, must simply run their course. Antibiotics do not work against viruses. Why it's harmful to overuse antibiotics. Taking antibiotics for colds and other viral illnesses not only won't work, but it can also have dangerous side effects. Over time, this practice actually helps create bacteria that are harder to kill. Frequent and inappropriate use of antibiotics can cause bacteria or other microbes to change, so antibiotics don't work against them. This is called bacterial resistance or antibiotic resistance. Treating these resistant bacteria requires higher doses of medicine or stronger antibiotics. Because of antibiotic overuse, certain bacteria have become resistant to even the most powerful antibiotics available today. Antibiotic resistance is a widespread problem and one that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, calls one of the world's most pressing public health problems. Bacteria that were once highly responsive to antibiotics have become more and more resistant. Among those that are becoming harder to treat are pneumococcal infections, which cause pneumonia, ear infections, sinus infections, and meningitis, skin infections, and tuberculosis. In addition to antibiotic resistance, overusing antibiotics can lead to other problems. Antibiotics kill many different bacteria, even the good ones that help keep the body healthy. Sometimes taking antibiotics can cause a person to develop diarrhea due to a lack of good bacteria that help digest food properly. In some cases, bad bacteria like Clostridium difficile or C. diff may overgrow and cause infections. Taking antibiotics safely. So what should you do when your child gets sick? To minimize the risk of bacterial resistance, keep these tips in mind. Take antibiotics only for bacterial infections. It is a good idea to let milder illnesses, especially those thought to be caused by viruses, run their course. This helps prevent antibiotic-resistant germs from developing, but leave it to your doctor to decide if an illness is mild or not. Even if the symptoms get worse but do last a while, take your child to the doctor. Seek advice and ask questions. Ask your doctor about whether your child's illness is bacterial or viral, and discuss the risks and benefits of antibiotics. If it is a virus, ask about ways to treat symptoms. Don't pressure your doctor to prescribe antibiotics. Ask your doctor about ways to treat the symptoms that are making your child uncomfortable, such as a stuffy nose or scratchy throat. The key to building a good relationship with your doctor is open communication, so work together toward that goal. Remember, antibiotics can only treat bacterial infection if taken for the full amount of time prescribed by the doctor. Talk to your pharmacist if you're unsure about how to give your child the right dose. The medicines take time to work, too, so don't expect your child to feel better after taking the first dose. It may take a child 1 or 2 days to feel better. Similarly, don't let your child take antibiotics longer than prescribed. And most importantly, never use antibiotics that have been lying around your home, and never give your child antibiotics that were prescribed for another family member or adult. Saving antibiotics for the next time is a bad idea, too. Any remaining antibiotics should be thrown out as soon as your child has taken the full course of medicine as prescribed. Help fight antibiotic resistance by taking simple steps to prevent the spread of infections. Encourage hand washing, make sure your kids are up to date on immunizations, and keep kids out of school when they are sick. And with this, we come to the end of the Health Magazine for this week. Do join us next week for a fresh edition of our program. Until then, have a good time, Radio Algeria International, and goodbye.
مع إذاعة الجزائر الدولية لن تفوتكم لحظة واحدة من الأخبار السياسية والاقتصادية الهامة.